the fig tree down. It's not bearing any fruit.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Disgrazia!
They will not allow Donald Trump to be president. This is the twisted mind of the left. You're putting a Band-Aid over a problem that's not being addressed. It's thrown around too liberally, hate speech. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't mean it's hate speech. So there are issues here that cross political lines.
It means that your libtard friends are not going to invite you over for Grey Goose and Foie Gras.
If you think that America is about you, you're just fooled.
I got to show you something that has me aggravated.
Joe Resinello with the front line with Joe and Joe. Once again, let us go into the breach. Joe Pasillo had to work tonight. We have a good friend of the show, Michael Arana. He has a great show. He's a Canadian social commentator, Arana Nation. Michael, welcome to the show, my friend.
It's good to be here, and thank you to you and to the viewers for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about Mr. Singh blaming the inflation on supermarkets, which is always ridiculous. Liberals always do that. They basically always want to detract from what they've done, and they always push it on corporate America. Not saying that corporate America doesn't have a hand in it, but obviously they caused the inflation due to Trudeau printing money, as well as his insane globalist agenda. Also, we're going to talk about Mr. International himself, Justin Trudeau, dancing around like a fool. He always puts out propaganda clips. He recently did one for the Greek Independence Day for Montreal. He did one for Ramadan. And we're going to play one which we both think is fairly amusing. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the conservative in Canada, Maxime. He's basically going to put forth an investigation on Trudeau, which will probably go nowhere. With that, Michael, what's rocking? Tell me what's happening in your side of the fence.
Oh, everything is going good. So I just got finished with my show, which was the previous hour, Arana Nation, which is on Sundays from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which just now got finished. And now I'm here with you, but everything is very good. I'm pleased to say that we are, when I say we, I mean the populist, conservative, revolutionary movement. We are winning. We're making ground roads. The globalists are panicking. They're overreacting. And I believe slowly but surely we're winning, and that's good. There are a lot of problems, but I think we are making progress here.
I'll tell you, I think their failures speak for themselves. It's really just an uphill battle. I mean, if people are clear-minded, if people have a linear thought process, I agree with you 100%. Because basically the consequences speak for themselves. I don't know how anyone could support Justin Trudeau. And I say this as an objective American. I mean, to be honest with you, I see through the guy like I could see throughout, look out the window. He's just an ideologue, and he's destroying your country. I don't know how regular people can live, to be honest with you. And to support him is just to support your oppressor.
Yeah, he's this. I call him the son of Satan. He's a tar-faced Mac Daddy. He's the son of Satan. I saw right through him from the beginning. 2015, when all kinds of different type of people said, "Oh, he's going to be great. He's good. Legalize weed." They say he's going to be the greatest thing. I mean, I saw through this guy from even back then. I saw through this guy. The first time I saw him was when he ran and he won the leadership of the Liberal Party. And I saw him on the television. I was living in Hamilton at the time, Hamilton, Ontario. And I saw him there making speech. I said to myself, this guy's going to be trouble. I saw right through him. And I've been proven right. And I mean, maybe it's not a good thing that I've been proven right, but nevertheless, I have been proven right. He's nothing but a tar-faced, skin-flinging son of Satan from the pits of hell, destroying this great country. Really, I can't think of anything he has done which has been good. I really can't.
No, I hear. You know what it is? I think a lot of people, they're true believers in climate change. It's a cult.
But has
They're
he even done
true.
anything good about climate change either? No, he hasn't. All he's done is made prices go up, made the cost of living go up, but he really hasn't done anything about climate change either.
No, I'll buy that. I mean, ultimately, though, like what I see in America when it comes to like the climate change cult, it's a lot of people that make a lot of money. I mean, they could afford the prices, the inflation that goes along with the globalist agenda. America doesn't have the infrastructure to have electric cars and the grids and get rid of gas stoves. And it doesn't have the infrastructure yet. Listen,
Well,
I'm all for clean energy, but it's got to come in steps. I mean, I have no problem with some of the ideas, but you can't strangle people. And to your point, that's just what's going on. And people,
yeah.
listen, if you make tons of money and you can afford 60 eggs for 20 something dollars, good for you. But most people can't. And and I'm not going to eat bugs. You know what I'm saying? Because God knows they're not gonna.
I don't know to eat bugs here. You're gonna eat bugs today here, Joe. No, I'm just kidding. But no, here's the thing. Even me, I myself, I support. I will say this. I do believe that an excess of carbon without a means of an excess of carbon is not good for our Earth because that'll turn us into Venus. However, I will say this. If it means I'm going to have to eat insects, maggots, things off of the ground, these insects which poo poo everywhere, and I have this, then might as well Earth to Venus. Here's what I'm saying, Joe. We can have a clean environment without destroying the Earth. But these globalists do not care about a clean environment. If they truly cared about a clean environment, they'd go after China. But
Oh,
nobody
I
goes
agree
after
with you.
China. Nobody talks about China. You say anything about China, you are a racist, you're a Chinaphobe, you're a Sinophobe. They're going. The problem is that this is not about the climate. This is about owning nothing and being happy about it, like United Nations said, like WEF said. Trudeau's not interested in a clean environment. He's not interested in planting one tree in every city every year. He's not interested in having what Sweden has, which is a trash to energy program, where you can essentially have no landfills on the face of the planet. He's not interested in making it easier for people to have electric vehicles. He's not interested in those things. He is interested in destroying the economy so that we own nothing and we are serfs and we're happy about being serfs. This has nothing to do with the environment. This has
It's funny. It's funny you say, they don't go after China. Ultimately, Saint Greta of the Blessed Sailboat, she hasn't gone to India or China. Who basically, I mean, there is no concern for recycling. I mean, I've been to India, like garbage piles in the middle of the street, animals eating out of garbage in the street.
uh,
In the morning, they set garbage on fire, plastics, because it's just not picked up. It's a
Greta.
disaster.
Greta should go back to school and learn and read and stop
Oh, they
coming here
love her.
feeling like
They have
she
a
knows
mural of
everything.
her in San
Doesn't know
Francisco. It's
anything.
insane.
Greta's not going to come to me, somebody who's graduated high school with degrees, which has his bachelor's, which is working on his master's, and try and lecture me at United Nations and do it. She needs to go back to school and read Greta Thunberg, and then everybody wants to pretend like she knows that Greta Thunberg is a puppet.
No, I hear you. I hear. Well, let's talk about Mr. Singh. Why don't we play our first clip and see what he has to say about the inflation, which is a farce.
McGregor, and let me go on the record saying, Mr. Singh, you've got big shoes to fill. Mr. McGregor is one of our good parliamentarians, so over to you for up to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to set the stage. My question goes directly to Mr. Weston. Right now, we're not just going through unprecedented period of cost of living crisis. We have families going into your stores, looking at the price of items, looking at them and putting them back because they can't afford them. We have families that are struggling to buy food for their kids in this country, in a G7 country. And they look at you and they see you making record profits. How can you justify that when families are struggling to put food on the table for their kids?
Thank you. We feel and understand that 95% of Canadians are concerned about food prices. But grocery chain profits are not the reason for food inflation. And as I mentioned,
Profit is too much profit.
Well, so a company needs some degree of profit.
Record profits more than you've ever made.
Mr. Singh, I'm going to stop you there. Of course, your time is your time, and I can appreciate that. But we've invited, in fact, we've summoned these witnesses to come here. You ask a question. Every member of this committee is expected to be able to hear the response.
Certainly.
And I need you to certainly be a little bit more mindful of making sure that is. I know it's your time, and I'll give you that discretion, but please don't cross lines here. So back to you.
How much profit is too much profit? You're making more money than you've ever made. How much profit is too much profit?
We're a big company and the numbers are very large, but it still translates right down to the bottom line at $1 per $25 of groceries. And if you consider our growth in profit in 2022 is 25 times lower than the unprecedented increases in costs that are being faced by the industry and by the world. And the fact that we have lower food price inflation in Canada than in so many other parts of the world is in part due to the high functioning of our food system here, and in part to the meaningful effort that is being made by the grocery store industry to keep prices as low as possible.
With respect,
Yeah.
The dude should get an Academy Award. Both of them. I always get a kick out of, because we see this in America. Like, that dude's on the payroll. They're all on the payroll. Ultimately, the problem begins in the government. What do I mean by that? They print money. Inflation goes through the roof. Also, they are affecting your economy in every way due to their removal of oil and gas. It affects everything. Now, there's the problem. Companies take advantage of that. There's no question that they're going to take advantage of that. But if those two things didn't happen, companies wouldn't take advantage of it. And I always love, because I hear these conversations in America too, they immediately go to the corporation. Well, if they didn't print money, Trudeau didn't print money, and if you basically just didn't abandon oil and gas, there's nothing to take advantage of. And prices would be what they were. And this guy's full of crap. And sadly, people parrot that conversation. I always hear it. Like, it's, I don't even know. Like, it's like they're 16 years old, Michael. Like when they're like, tax corporations to no end, then they fire people. Do you think that they're going to give their profits away out of the goodness? It doesn't work that way. Like,
Yeah,
like it's a lack of understanding of how economics works, and people buy it. What do you think?
but also you forgot the fact about the pandemic, the so-called COVID-19 pandemic. The fact of the matter is they closed down the economy over a virus which kills less than 1% of people who got it. People weren't allowed to work. People weren't allowed to produce things, which means that if there was not enough products in the economy. But then on top of that, they're giving away free money in CERB. So you have an excess of money and few products. That's called inflation. Everybody knows you have few products and too much money chasing few products. That's called inflation. And by the way, I'm not here defending these big companies, but they are a symptom. I mean, let's take Loblaws, for example. Loblaws doesn't raise price because they want more money. They raise price because they need to keep up with demand. If too many people are looking for eggs or chicken or bacon, but there's not enough chicken or eggs or bacon, they have to raise the price so that they don't have empty shelves like they do in North Korea or Cuba. That's the reason prices go up. Because of record profit doesn't mean that these CEOs are swimming in money while we're suffering. It just happens that they have to raise the price so that they can slow down the demand for certain products. Now, if Singh was serious about calming inflation, what he would say is, first of all, what he would say is that we made a mistake locking down this economy and printing money over a virus which kills less than 1% of people. Then what he would say is that what we need to do is we need to, of course, tax people who might be making excess profit because we don't want too much money into an already overheated economy. But for him to just talk about, oh, this is all big companies' fault, he knows it's a lie. Most of this is his fault.
But they just people buy it. That's the thing that frustrates me, Michael.
Jagmeet Singh is nothing but a puppet of liberals. Jagmeet Singh will never become the Prime Minister of Canada. I promise. There's very few things I can promise you and your viewers. I'm promising you this. Jagmeet Singh will never be Prime Minister of Canada. He is a puppet of Trudeau. He says these things because it sounds good, but there's no brain inside that head of his. People believe it because they themselves don't have a lot of brain power in here either. And I'm not saying this because I support big business. I believe that the big businesses, they're the ones who lay the golden egg. They are the ones who pay the taxes, which makes us have the free health care, the retirement programs, the roads. If you eat the rich, you destroy the rich. There's no more roads. You think there's no rich people in North Korea. The only rich person in North Korea is Kim Jong-il. Cuba is the same thing. That's what will end up if we get rid of rich people. I'm not here supporting rich people. If rich people do things to our country and our economy which hurt us, I will tax the living daylights out of them until they stop doing it. But I will also have to understand that it is the rich people who pay the taxes which make us have the roads, the bridges, the healthcare, the retirement, the good defense, et cetera, et cetera. And for people to blame these companies on inflation, they know it's wrong. It's the politicians who shut down the economy, stopped production, and printed the money.
No, the printing the money, absolutely. I also think it's the oil. Listen, the world may eventually go away from an oil-based economy. It affects everything. The shipping of food, flying, everything. And the globalists are turning off the spigot. That is the driver in America with our and people. You made a point. Like, I think there are some people that don't think into things, but then there's people who just want to believe it because politics have become a religion. It's a religion. It's a cult. Like, it's your identity. And it's almost like your family. Like, if something's going wrong in your family, you don't want to hear, even if it's right, even if what someone is saying is right, like something really bad is going on, people don't want to hear other people talk about it. So they just kind of pretend like it wasn't said. They compartmentalize it. And that's what happens here in America. And I think that's what's happening in Canada too.
Oh, yeah.
Justin Trudeau is beating the middle class senseless down to the working poor, beating them senseless. But yet there are people within those brackets that support him. And you could look them straight in the face and you could put out all the facts. The arguments could be sound, yet they still will support them. They may even agree with you on certain points. And I look at that in America, and I'll be honest with you, I'm flabbergasted. Anybody in the middle class that supports someone who is a globalist, who gets their economic ideas from the World Economic Forum, they are not for you. If you make tons of money, say you make 700K Canadian, support them because you could afford it. You're good. But if you're a regular guy, you can't.
those same people who make all that money, they themselves will die out as well. They
Listen,
themselves will die out as well. When you talk about politics being a religion, you're right about that. I tell people, first of all, I told people back in 2020, this is a virus that kills less than 1% of people. I gave them the facts. Stop forcing everybody to wear masks. If you want to wear it, you wear it. You'll be just as protected. But and it makes sense. Everybody knows that what I'm saying makes sense. Otherwise, you wouldn't have all these politicians who make laws for us and break their own laws because they know that they're not afraid. But it's because they belong to because it's I who said it or someone who thinks like me who says it. They don't want to believe it because I'm not part of their screwed up thinking. You talked about oil, Joe. You talked about oil. Another thing you should have also mentioned is the fact that not only are we shutting off the oil here in Canada, which has probably just as much oil as Saudi Arabia, and we don't want to drill for it. We're making it harder for the drillers to drill for it. We're also picking a fight with Russia, which used to provide us with oil. And as a result, so now we're not getting oil from Russia. We don't want to drill for our own oil. This is the reason why the oil is going up. But those same Jagmeet Singh type people will blame the oil companies. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be a puppet for the oil people, but I'm here to talk about it. It's the truth. The fact of the matter is, if there's not enough oil production, but we still have a mass need and a mass demand for oil, but there's not enough oil because we're making it harder for the oil people to drill. And on top of that, we're not building the Trans-Canada pipeline. And on top of that, we're now picking a fight with Russia, which used to give us a whole bunch of oil. The price is going to have to go up. That's how the economy works.
absolutely. And that affects everything. That affects everything. And they don't talk about that either. That was a conscious decision. That's a conscious decision coming out of Trudeau's office. And all the elitists and all the liberals embrace it. And they're strangling regular people. And here's another thing, they don't care. They don't care. I mean, the story just recently, Trudeau goes out to England for the Queen's funeral. He spends $6,000 a night on a hotel room. I read something. It was like $16 for a glass of orange juice, or some absurd $13, $16 for a glass of orange juice. I read that in the 5 days that he was there, he dropped 35K. That's like a very good percentage of a working man's salary for the year in Canada. He did that in 5 days. No apologies, no care. It's always good for thee, but not for me. That's how these characters operate. And people give them the pass. Again, it comes down to regular people. Why are you going to support somebody who doesn't care about you at all? He cares about staying in power, and he cares about putting forth an ideology in Canada. He is so much like Barack Obama in America. They're ideologues. They want to change the country. Be damned the consequences. Be damned the people. That's a secondary. I will deflect. I will basically, if all out lie, use the media to basically as a smokescreen for my ideology that will go forth. We're going to change the country. And the sick part about it, Michael, you see, Trudeau is a true believer. He does this like he thinks he's absolutely right. I know better than you. I'm helping you. I remember, you probably remember this, like Obama talking to that guy. It was like Joe the plumber. I think he was in like Ohio. Here's a guy that builds a business. I mean, granted, it's not like, mobile, but he builds his own business. He's a smart guy. He's making a living. Obama's talking to him like he's an idiot. Like, no, 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 no. I know better. No, what do you know? What did you ever do? You were a college professor, and then you became a politician. And then basically you fleeced everybody and their cousin, and now you own two mansions. One's worth $40 million, the other one's worth $15 million in DC, and you're building another one in Hawaii. You never did anything.
Barack Obama should be in jail now.
Oh, without a doubt. But
Barack
so
Obama,
could Trudeau. They're
Barack,
the same guy.
yeah, Barack Obama. One of the worst things which he'll take to his grave is killing Colonel Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Now, this is a leader who, granted, whatever you think about him personally, he is probably one of two competent leaders that Africa ever had. The other one probably being Paul Kagame of Rwanda. When Gaddafi was president, the economy was functioning. You had infrastructure, people, education. You know, one of the few places, and it's sad to say, but it's one of the few places where you would find highly skilled people of black color. The other one being Canada, which I will say, when you come to Canada, you will find black people who are lawyers or engineers, and that's why when I'm in, that's why I feel prouder in my country than I do even when I go to the States. Obama comes in, and because he's a puppet of NATO, he decides it's time to kill Gaddafi because Gaddafi is not following toe-to-toe with the globalist Western mantra. He kills him, destabilizes Libya, and now Libya has gone from a country which had a very bright future to a country now where people are literally slaves. Black people, slavery. You think, people like to talk about America and racism and everything. One of the places in this world which has black slavery like they did in the South is Libya. And it's all because of Barack Obama, so-called first black president. He should be locked up now. Don't talk to me about Putin. Don't talk to me about Putin or Trump. Obama and Hillary Clinton, the Jezebel, both of them should be locked up right now for crimes against humanity.
Oh, I would agree. I like I said, I actually think what Trudeau's doing to the regular man in Canada is a crime because he sleeps perfectly fine. The average person, you're a bus driver. How do you eat? How about what he's doing with regard to legalized euthanasia? That's directed at the poor.
Mhm.
At the poor. That's what communists do. People say, "Oh, you're going too far." He's a cultural communist. If you and he's a secular humanist. If you're like when you come from say a Judeo-Christian like country or even mindset, people have value. Like I don't care what you can produce if you're old, if you're young. Secular humanists could care less. What can you do for me? You're a consumer. How can I extract money from you? And if you can't, you're mentally ill, you're old, you're a child in the womb. Forget it.
And
Forget it.
the problem about it is too is that the problem too is that not only do they only care about what you can do for them, when people like Trudeau, and Obama and all these globalists run things, it's harder for you to do anything for them, even if you want to. In Obama's America and Trudeau's Canada, it's not easy to run businesses. It's not easy to be a self-made man. You can't do that. You forget about it. Your job in those countries is to own nothing and be happy, to live off government. And if you do anything that irritates the government, they will pull the carpet from your feet, and you'll probably end up in jail as well. That's the world you live in when you're living global. It's the type of world you live in.
Well, what I'm seeing in corporate America here in the US, and I think we're seeing a taste of it in Canada with the collusion that took place between the banks and Trudeau, because recently some texts were basically discovered that Trudeau was communicating with the banks. It's something that's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Basically, it's a model whereby the government and the corporation basically collude with one another. And it's a way that governments can get around their own constitution. Now,
Mhm,
we saw this with the truckers. You
mhm,
know, Trudeau is communicating with the banks,
mhm,
and basically they froze bank accounts. He did that under the Emergencies Act,
mhm.
which, to be honest with you, is way too broad. If I was in Canada, I would push for politicians that they have to basically restrict that act so it could never be weaponized against people again. But also, Canadians have to be aware of what I call as ESG strategies, whereby the government is going to weaponize corporations against the people, and they can get around your own laws. And I could use the example, say, in America, the liberals are always fighting for like anti-gun laws. Now, where I live in New Jersey, I'm not a gun guy. I don't support the NRA. I do support the Second Amendment, though, because I want people to have guns. Because frankly, the reason why that's in the Constitution in America is to protect people against tyranny. That's why, and that's why they want to take the guns away. I don't have a gun, but I support the amendment. But what I mean by ESG policies is, say you're an American, you buy a gun on a credit card. The credit card company could share that information with the government, and they could weaponize that information against you. That's an ESG policy. That should be illegal. Right now, DeSantis in Florida is trying to pass legislation to make it illegal. Also in America, the Democrats and the Republicans, it was a joint piece of legislation, passed it. It went to Biden's desk. He vetoed it because, again, people don't even know what it is, ESG. They're not paying attention. The reason why he vetoed it is because he uses it as a tool to get around the laws. And that's what's going to happen in Canada. You're seeing it again with that collusion. I'm interested in your comments. What he
Oh, it's
did with the
probably
bank,
already
that was
happened.
horrible.
I think it's probably already happened. That sounds like digital currency.
It's very similar to it, but we're seeing it. I'm telling you, it's something. Basically, if you ask me what regular people have to do, financial boycotts. I'm not buying your product. You put forth this type of activity, just like unions, people have to stick together and just be like, listen, XYZ company, like we could use Tim Hortons. They basically, you talked about the pandemic, they basically made kids get the shot to go to their summer camps. People have to remember that. Guess what, Tim? We're not going to spend money at your place. You're done. You
Yeah.
cut them off. That's how regular people could fight these people, but they just don't. People don't have the will. Like, I'm not going to support the NFL. I'm not going to support Starbucks. I am not supporting Netflix. I'm not going to support Disney.
And you
No.
see, the thing about it is too is, and this is what I was talking about on my other on the channel on the other hour. We also have to play chess with these companies. I was talking about DirecTV. It's very easy to put DirecTV in their place when they go against us. When they got rid of Newsmax, for example, which is the conservative channel. I told people immediately when I heard that DirecTV did that, get rid of your subscription of DirecTV. You have plenty of other options. I mean, even if those options themselves are not themselves all kosher, DirecTV has done something so blatant, so out in the open, so obvious that we can just easily boycott them completely. And now, the other day, they put Newsmax back on their platform. And I was saying to people, listen, I'm not going to just go back to DirecTV just because they put them back on their program. I say we don't go back to DirecTV until they beg us for forgiveness. Beg us. They have to beg us. They have to have a news conference live, prime time, midday, wherever, 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whenever we get back home, begging for our forgiveness. And you see, DirecTV has learned a powerful lesson. You know, I know YouTube and all these other people are no good either, but we have to make it clear to these big companies that if they do something so obviously out of order, which hurts us, which hurts the average person, which hurts the populist conservative movement, treating us like redheaded stepchildren. We need to show them that, listen, this is going to have a very powerful consequence. And you're going to have someone like me convincing other people to completely boycott them until they beg for forgiveness. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of companies which support the average person. But that's why I say we have to choose our battles, fight our battles. I mean, if we boycott DirecTV for doing something like banning Newsmax and we go to Dish, even though Dish might not be completely kosher, well, we're not literally, going in bed with them and, you know, making love to them, but we're flirting with them, we're playing with them. And and if they do something, then we go somewhere else. We have to dance around the chessboard. That's how we play with these people, so that they have to, basically what I'm trying to say is that they have to be afraid to mess with us.
No, I listen, I agree with you. And I think people have to like also be disciplined. If that means going without something, you go without it.
Hmm.
Like because freedom is not given, it's taken. It was taken from the United States and Canada. The emergency that was the pandemic, our freedoms were taken. They were.
Hmm.
And I got news for you. They're not giving them back. We have to take them. And that requires discipline. And and to be honest with you, it doesn't require violence. They want you to be violent, actually. They want you to be violent because then it gives them the excuse to jump down your throat. That's what January 6th was all about. They want more of that. What people have to do is just similar to what you're seeing in Europe right now with the Dutch, with the French. They're basically not having it. You shut them down. You just shut them down. And that's what people have to do. Million people show up in DC. Shut the highways down. Shut them down. Stop movement. People are getting crushed. I mean, like I've been following what's going on in France. Justin Trudeau, I mean not Justin Trudeau, Macron basically says you can't even demonstrate anymore. If you ask me, it's like a scene from like the French Revolution minus the guillotine. They're going crazy. They're burning things. People are going nuts. And all they did was change the retirement age 2 years. How about you can't eat? How about you can't like put heat in your house? That's the direction. In April 1st in Canada, the carbon tax is going up. That's going to hurt people even more. Even more.
But you
People
see,
have to
these
it's
French,
Michael, it's crazy.
yeah, but you see these French now, who are going on and stuff, and I support them, by the way, I do. But the problem is that they voted for him. So I mean, they voted for Macron because they don't want Le Pen, and now look what's happening to them. So my sympathy only goes so far with France, because they had a chance just a year ago to get rid of Macron, and they didn't do it. So my sympathy only goes so far. Nevertheless, I do agree with the fact that they are standing up to him and embarrassing him. My sympathy is a lot more with the Dutch and the Dutch farmers, who are, by the way, really being effective. I heard that the Dutch farmers won municipal elections the other day, which really uh, made a big defeat for the ruling party of Netherlands, which is trying to destroy Dutch agriculture and Dutch farming with globalist tactics, making it harder to farm in the Netherlands, which will also increase the prices, and again, which will cause a situation where you own nothing and you be happy about it. And the Dutch farmers have literally poked holes, giant holes, into that plan. Um, so Europe, you see, the thing with Europe is that they've been dealing with these globalists a lot longer than we have in North America.
I
So
would
they're
agree.
a lot more effective at dealing with them. But what's happening in Europe, I promise you, is going to happen here too.
Oh, I agree with you
And I'm going to
100%.
support it too. And I'll
I
say this about violence. I'll say this: I don't support violence either. Not for now, at least. I don't. I'm not supporting it. But you mentioned January 6th. The thing with January 6th is that they didn't have a plan. You go into the Capitol building and you do what?
That
You
was
sit on
that
the
was like a fraternity stunt. That was
Yeah, you
ridiculous.
just sit on Pelosi's seat and everything. That's not going to do anything. That's why all those people are in jail now. And I mean, it's sad, but and that's why that girl got herself shot. You have to have up to these sort of things.
That was just
So
stupid.
like the Dutch, they have their plan. Like even I give out free about boycotts. If they bring in digital currency, listen, we use cash. If they ban cash and they try and stop people from getting the essentials that they need to survive because they said something that's uncomfortable to the globalists, it's mass stealing. It's not stealing it, basically, it's survival. That's an organized plan. That is a narrow, carefully thought out, organized. This isn't some Ray Che thing where we're just going to jump up and down and break things, tear up things, and go back home and eat bologna sandwich. No, we have to think about the steps ahead. When the coronavirus pandemic, so-called pandemic, I said we're not going to get the vaccine. We're not going to do that. I mean, I don't want to get too much into that. Build fake vax cards, all this sort of stuff. Those are things, and look, we won. So that's the thing we have to do. We have to see what the problem is. We have to think about solutions and how we're going to overcome these things. And that's why I'm so proud of those Dutch farmers who have said, if you're going to damage our industry, we're not going to produce for you. We're not going to produce for you. You're not
Well,
going
that's
to
that you got to hit people where it hurts, and you're right. That's how you
exactly.
move it.
And when those Dutch people noticed that their shelves were being empty because those farmers said, we are only going to produce enough food for our family and our neighborhood. And until you guys support politicians who are not going to hurt these farms, we are not producing for you. What ended up happening in Netherlands a few days ago, they just had municipal elections where the Farm Party, which is a completely new party, won the most municipal councils. Now, how does that happen? Because of discipline.
That's big. I think the problem too, I can't speak for Canada, but I could speak for America. It's again the use of the emergency. Uh, Voting laws have changed. You see the mail-in ballots. You don't have to show ID. I live in a blue state, New Jersey. My whole life I voted. I always vote. You showed a license. You don't show a license anymore. They send mail-in ballots to everyone in the state. Why?
You shouldn't use mail-in
Of
ballots.
course. Why? What's
Don't
the
use
reason?
Yeah,
You show up.
yeah.
And listen, it's we know the reason. The reason, if you ask me, it's to allow non-documented people. That's why the border is open. Um, Ultimately, that is the reason. And people have to call that out like it is. Listen, the people use the wrong line. They say like there was they talk about like there was cheating. My angle on this is it's the law. They used it, it's legal. It's very simple. What happened in Florida, why DeSantis won by 20 points is paper ballots, no computers, have to show ID, have to show up in person, and there has to be a cop, and you film the counting.
I'll,
Boom,
I'll,
there's a control.
I'll tell you another reason why DeSantis won and also why Donald Trump won in 2016 is because people actually showed up to vote. I'll tell you, the thing about it is that these people can rig elections all they want. But at the end of the day, it's human beings who rig these. This isn't God. This isn't an act of God where you just wave a wand and a few million extra ballots show up. These guys have to do work here. So we also, again, talk about being proactive. People have to, first of all, show up in person because I'm not voting by mail to have my
No
ballot
way.
being thrown in a garbage can. But I'm going in person, and it's better to show up on the day too. on the day to
But
vote
that's all
in
that
person.
should be,
In
Michael.
the,
Like
in
in
the
India, they vote. It's the largest democracy in the world. They actually, how they do it, they dye your finger. If India, and it's a large swath of India is living in the third world. If they can do it, why can't Canada and America do it?
Well, because we need discipline. We need to show up. And I don't want to hear any nonsense about, oh, voting is oh, don't bother voting, it's rigged. I don't hear nonsense. Like when I hear those things on my show, I delete it because that is basically an excuse. Yes, the thing is rigged, but the way to counter that is to overwhelm the ballot boxes on election day in person with your ballot, overwhelm them, put your thing in the box, and then when these people open up the box to count it, they realize, oh my goodness, look at all of these last minute Trump votes, which have voted in person. This is going to be so hard to rig. Do you think that those people who rigged 2020 didn't try to rig 2016? Of course they did. They did. Of course they did. But he still won because people were very enthused about Trump. They went out en masse to vote for Trump in Iowa, in Wisconsin, Florida, Ohio, and they overwhelmed the ballot boxes with Trump votes in person on the day of the voting. And it was almost impossible for these people to rig the thing. Now we go to 2020 where people were too comfortable. They thought he was going to win anyway, Trump. They want to vote by mail, all this sort of nonsense. Some of them didn't even bother to vote. Oh, he'll win anyway, doesn't matter. So it's easier for them to rig it.
Well, I'll tell you, I also think you have to make it where there is no more mail-in, but there's no
Yeah,
justification.
I agree with
None.
you. I agree with you.
Zero.
I
Like,
agree. But before we do that, we have to get those politicians in who will stop the mail-in ballots.
you're right. And people don't have the political will to do it. They don't say, I want to get to the Premier conversation, but they don't have the will. Like you have to, and when someone calls you a name because of that, no, I want everyone to vote. Everyone, but you have to be a citizen. You have to be a taxpayer. I want every tax paying Canadian and American voting. Everyone.
Mhm.
But you have to show up. You have to show up. It's one day, and at the end of the day, there's a winner. That doesn't make me a racist. That doesn't make me a hater. That makes me a citizen of the country that wants fair and free elections. Everyone should vote, but you got to show up. And if you don't show up, I don't want to hear it. And that's the end of the conversation. And if you have that line, you're somehow a fascist, you're a racist, you're a hater. No, I'm not. That's just common sense. It's common sense. And you can't even say that publicly. You're somehow put in a corner. What is that?
No,
It's
I don't.
crazy.
No, I don't. I'm not afraid of this word racist. That word doesn't scare me. One thing I will say that disappoints me is that it's sad how these white leftists, these white globalists, and I'm not just it's black too, but I'm it's them who have the power. George Soros, these Rothschild people, these WEF people, they have abused that word to such a point where it doesn't mean anything
Oh,
anymore.
100%. It's
So
sad,
if
actually.
I go down the street now and I'm abused by some skinhead or something, and I say this is racist, people are saying that they're accusing me of whining. Why? Because these people have abused that word to such a point where it doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore.
I
It's just a
agree.
weapon to shut people up.
I agree 100%. Let's play the clip for Vermeer. I want to hear what he has to say. Oh, we don't have the clip. Okay, we could talk about it. Basically, Michael, give a little like synopsis of him. He's sort of like the Donald Trump of Canada, what he's all
Bernier.
about.
Oh yeah, Bernier. He's so Bernier, he runs the People's Party of Canada. This is this is a political party which he created about a few years ago. I would say 2018. Maybe a little bit before that. He used to be a conservative politician, but he's not a part of the Conservative Party anymore. I think he was actually either he was thrown out of it or he removed himself because to him they weren't conservative enough, which he had a point. Um, and during the coronavirus mandates, he was pretty much the only person who stood up against the vaccine mandates, against the mask mandates, against all of these lockdowns. He stood up against it. And he was rewarded with about 5 or 6% of the vote, which might not seem like a lot, but in a country where there's like 5, 6 political parties, main serious political parties, that was a lot. Um, so yeah, he is somebody who I like. Unfortunately, when you have someone like him, what tends to happen is that the right wing vote in Canada gets split. Now, I don't necessarily have a big problem with that because what I like with Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, you see, think of it like this. The Liberals are like, in Canada, we have the Liberals, NDP, Conservative, PPC. The Liberals are Hillary Clinton. NDP is Bernie Sanders. Conservative is Ron DeSantis on a good day, Bush on a bad day. Is Donald and maybe Ron Paul. That's think of it that way to make it clear. The fact that Maxime going to completely align himself with the conservatives, because that means that if the conservatives mess up and they sell out, then at least we have the PPC to vote for. So the PPC is basically a check, as far as I'm concerned, on the conservatives. Now the conservatives have a new leader, Pierre Poilievre, who is pretty good. He did make a little bit of a slip up the other day when he put Christine Anderson, a German politician, under the bus, calling her racist and sounding like a liberal. But for the most part, he's good. But if Pierre Poilievre messes up, at least we the people, the populist conservative movement, has the PPC to vote for if Pierre messes up. I will vote for Pierre this election coming up, which is whenever it's called. It'll be any time because Canada's parliament has a minority, so it can be called anytime. If the NDP starts getting a backbone and decides to stand up against the Liberals, then we'll have an election sooner rather than later. And I'll vote for Pierre, but I don't want Maxime Bernier to dissolve his party and join with the Conservatives. I want him to stick around and keep the Conservatives loyal.
I get it. That's sort of like Bernie Sanders used to act like that, like in a sense, he keep people in their view in that liberal. He was sort of his own man. What about his investigation? I mean, he's investigating Trudeau. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I
Yeah, that's
think
not going anywhere. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because Trudeau and his people run the government.
that's right.
Even if he has a minority, the problem, Joe, is that Jagmeet Singh, that token that you played at the top of the show, he's nothing but a handbag carrier of the tar-faced Mac Daddy Justin Trudeau. He is Justin Trudeau's ice boy. When Trudeau wants ice for his whiskey, he calls Jagmeet Singh. That's all Jagmeet Singh is there for. He is a servant of the Liberals. So you have the Liberals in Parliament, which have the most seats, but they don't have a majority. So they rely on the NDP and Jagmeet Singh, the servants of the Liberals, to give them that majority. So the Liberals and the NDP control the government of Canada. So as long as that's taking place, Maxime Bernier, Conservatives, nobody can really do anything from inside of the government. That's why after the Emergencies Act and you had that inquiry, that wasn't going anywhere. You can't rely on that inquiry because it's the government investigating itself.
No, 100%. I agree with you 100%. I mean, ultimately, I think they have to narrow that act. And to your point, we see the same thing. I mean, call it the deep state, call it the establishment, call it the elites. They run everything. Even like you take like the Bush Republicans, all in the same bucket. They're never going to rock the boat. Why would you rock the boat? Your life is good. You know what I'm saying? Like these people, that's where people have to step up. You know, what I also was thinking too, there was an emergency. You know, they created an emergency out of the pandemic. Um, what if an emergency was to take place? Say it was a geopolitical emergency. You know, these are things like, you know, there's the old saying, man plans and God laughs. Say there was a conflict between Israel or Iran. Say China invades Taiwan. Say a nuclear event was to take place somewhere in the world. That could carry somebody like Maxime Bernier into the premier to be the PM, or bring Donald Trump back. You know, sometimes things happen that push, similar to like what brought Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was sort of pushed to the fringes. All of a sudden, London gets bombed. Bam! Winston Churchill is in the chair. That could happen. You know what I'm saying? And if it did, I think you'd see some changes. To be honest with you, I think you'd see changes for the better. But unless such an emergency is to happen, I don't see it, Michael. I
Well, things have
honestly,
to get way worse before they get better.
I agree. You're 100%. I think this is the beginning.
The
I
people
think
of Canada, they're suffering, but it needs to get far worse. And
I agree. Same
like
with
I
America.
said,
Listen, you're 100% right. And it will get worse.
yeah, and I've said on my show, Canada, unfortunately, is cursed right now. God has cursed Canada because of the mistakes and the errors, the constant repeated errors that have been done by this country ever since the 60s. So that's why we're seeing all this craziness, inflation, all the people unhappy, all this drugs, crime going through the roof, all of this problems happening. Um, I don't even, and I've told people, even if you have Pierre Poilievre, even if you have Maxime Bernier there, even them, they can't just fix it in one day. You know, Canada has to transform. The people of Canada have to change the way they think before things can really get better. And I think the only way that can happen is if things get worse under this globalist dominated Canada right now. And it will. It will. I tell you, it'll get worse. The only problem is that hopefully it doesn't get so bad where the country completely collapses before we have a chance to change it.
I would agree. I think America is going to get darker as well. I think in many, many, many ways, it's going to get much worse. I mean, and then maybe that'll shake people up. I know we're coming towards the end. I just want people, until there is that change, I want people to take a look at this clip, because this is your prime minister. I think it sums up the show in a nutshell. This is who you elected. This is who's running your country, and this is who you need to get rid of. Play the clip. Well, there you have it, Canada. Justin Trudeau, the international man that he is, Mr. Inclusive, doing a dance. And frankly, he's still doing a dance. He's doing it on you and he's doing it on me. It's a shame. Michael, closing thoughts before we wrap it up.
Yeah, but he's not even doing it properly. He's not even doing it properly. They should have thrown him out of that thing, man. He's embarrassing them. He's not even doing it properly. No, man, this is unacceptable. He wasn't even doing it properly. I think he should be brought up for. He should get sensitivity training for cultural appropriation.
I would agree.
He's not even doing the dance properly there. Those people they're dancing with him, they should be ashamed of themselves. What's wrong with them, man? Having this tire face Mac Daddy coming into their organization, and on top of that, he's not even doing their dance properly.
I love it. Michael, thank you for joining us tonight. It was a great conversation. And thanks, everybody, for joining us, both of us.
Thank you.
As always, we enter the breach. And remember that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. Make sure you catch Michael's show. Michael, direct everybody to the show time and where they could find it.
Yeah, it's Arana Nation every Sunday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on FLTV. You can also subscribe to me on Rumble, rumble.com/Arana Nation, bitshoot.com/Arana Nation, and follow me on Truth Social at truthsocial.com/@Arana Nation. That's where you can find my channel. And I also say that if you're watching these live streams on YouTube, don't watch them on YouTube. Watch them on Rumble. Save YouTube for the kitten videos.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you all for joining. And remember to come back next Sunday and have a good week.
Thank you.
Tired of doing business with companies who don't share or support your beliefs? Then you need to switch from your current phone company to Charity Mobile. Charity Mobile is the pro-life phone company. 5% of your monthly plan goes to support the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice. There are no contracts, and Charity Mobile makes it very easy to switch. Act now, because for a limited time, new customers who mention the offer code Joe and Joe get a free phone with free activation and free shipping. Chat with us online at CharityMobile.com or call us at 877-474-3662.